My next guest is Ken Burrows. He uses hip hop and rap music to teach students language arts with high engagement and cultural relevance. He connects with students using the voice of the youth, giving them self expression while educating them. It's not just about learning the beat, it's also about playing popular educational rap songs. Realizing that students need more than just a hip rap song with slick visuals, they need to connect with the educational songs directly and meaningfully to learn. Ken has started Rap Opera for Kids, which provides teachers with language arts skills and activities needed to bring students deeper into the content and teach a variety of skills using rap song lyrics as authentic, engaging text that students will love. Welcome to the podcast, Ken.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, tell me about a time when you were in the trenches and managed to crawl out.
Right. So the most recent time I can think about is working as a Title III coordinator, and we were under an audit. And there are a lot of things we had to do to improve our program and serve English learners. And the first way forward was basically understanding the law, understanding what's required in it, how to serve students, how to serve the families, and also how to increase the proficiency and the abilities of our teachers. And it was quite a it would have been a longer process, but I was able to get a lot of people on board. We were all speaking the same language, and we were able to move quickly to fix a lot of the problems we had going on.
And you said it was even at the point where it was a corrective action plan for the
Yes.
school. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I'll go into that as well. So the first challenge was just making sure we identified all the English learners, and that was a process of training and making sure, one, I understood the law, two, making sure other people understood it, and then providing the training to all the various people who were involved as stakeholders in the English learner program.
Is this a over a course of a year process or multiple years that you worked your way out of the trench with that school?
Right. So we were told that it would take maybe 3 to 4 years. We were able to get it done in about a year and a half. So yeah, that was a huge win. And I think the first step in just going through the process was starting with the English learners and understanding what their needs were. A lot of them had they needed different forms of instruction, and in where I am in Virginia, they talk. There's one model called the CCI, Content Class Integrated Support Model. Then there's an English Learner Development Model, the ELD, and then also there's the newcomer program. And then working specifically to look at our data to see which program worked specifically for various students, and then using that data to push the program forward based on the measurements we were able to see in achievement.
Okay, yeah. No, definitely. Having worked with that population, I know there's a lot of boxes to check and making sure you're in compliance with the law. So, it's a good experience that you've worked your way through that and kind of know if you were ever to come up against a similar situation, right? You've
Yes.
been able to experience what is needed for that. So let's talk a little bit about your current role and then how that aligns with the use of rap opera for kids.
Yes. Yeah. That's a great point. So, just going back to being in the trenches, just recently last week, one of the schools that has one of our largest EO populations, the principal over there had asked me to work with their school in overall in just boosting the morale as we're going into state testing. And I think we can both agree kids are over tested. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of challenge with motivation and perspective and understanding, what are all these tests for? How do we keep students motivated? How do we keep them going forward? And the principal knew that I did a lot of work with using hip hop and language arts and my background working with English learners, and then using rap music and rap songs to keep students motivated and to educate. So I collaborated with her and some of the other administrators in the building, and we put together a performance, a pep rally, so to speak, where well, specifically, I worked with students to figure out, what did they want to communicate to their peers? What were the test taking strategies that they learned that would be useful? And more specifically, how to communicate that in a way that would resonate with their audience of peers. So we worked on that. It was a really quick turnaround. I found it on Thursday. I worked with the students on Friday. We performed on a Monday. And it went really well, especially when I started looking at the response from the student body. I mean, there was cheers, now they have something specifically the students I worked with, 5 of them who worked to write the song and perform, they have something that represents them, represents their voice. It's relevant because it's not just an adult telling them, hey, this is what you should be doing. It's they get to collaborate with the adults and to present what they understand and what resonates with them. And going back into the EL piece, again, this was a school that had a large EL population, providing a song, and then we also had some graphics with some emojis and some fun stuff in there, providing that for the EL audience, the EL students who, they're going into testing, some of them for the first time. They don't understand, they don't have a good background on it. They're from different cultures, different countries. Having a song that has that rhythm to, lower the affective filter, to get them excited, to make them feel that they can do it. They can go in there and, take a test. They don't have to worry about it. They have all the tools they need. They can think about the song, and they can just, put their best foot forward and do what they can do.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, that takes away a lot of the anxiety. When kids are new to this testing environment, I think a lot of schools are seeing, an increase in multilingual learners. And
Yeah.
like, we have testing everywhere in the US. There are many other countries that have that, but some of the countries our students come from don't. So
Right.
like, yeah, helping them with that assembly. I know a lot of schools have some type of assembly to get the kids motivated for the state testing. But like you said, it got them remembering kind of what they needed. Was that kind of the lyrics embedded? Was it them remembering kind of the strategies for good test taking, or kind of what were the lyrics?
Right. Yeah. So it started off with, I always want, when I work in creating songs for students, I always want to use something that they connect with. That's something that speaks to them. That is part of a huge aspect of hip hop. It's really the voice of the youth and them communicating what they want. So the song was called "Flex on the Test," and if you're familiar
Okay.
with the slang term, or so to speak, flex, it just means to show and do your best. And it was
Yeah.
something that resonated with them because it's something they talk about all the time. Like, oh, he flexed on the court, he flexed on the games, meaning they showed their best. And then the lyrics were basic reminders about things like eating a good breakfast. They also had what they call a flex sheet, and that's where the idea of flex on the test came from. It's what most people would probably call a dump sheet. So it was a reminder to, make your flex sheet, don't stress out. And one student, I thought it was really cool that he remembered to his input was that he said, keep a positive mind. And then he followed that with stay on your grind. And that was a lyric that resonates with kids and the music they listen to. So those were the main aspects of it. It was coupling really good test taking strategies, practical things like getting some rest, eat a good breakfast, and then also the mental preparation, the keep a positive mind, and then also using phrases that connect with them. Stay on your grind. It's your time to shine. Those are the things that went into the song, and we put on a dance, and then we did like a call and response with them, where I would say something, they would say it back to me, and it really kept them motivated. And following that up, we took the lyrics from the song and we would cut those lyrics up and give them out to different students, and they would have that to look at and to remember as they're going into a test, so that the music, it motivates them just beyond the performance and into the rest of the testing season, and hopefully really into the rest of their lives.
So when you're talking about cutting up things, I was also wondering, did you take video of the students during the assembly and kind of did clips on TV monitors in the school as well?
That's a good question. Honestly, I don't know if someone filmed it. I was
Okay.
so wrapped up in just
Yeah.
being with kids, doing the music, doing the dance. I often forget to do that. Someone might have some video. I'm happy to share it. I do plan on recording the song and putting it up on my YouTube channel just so everyone can use it and reflect on it. But I personally did not take any video. There was just so many moving parts. We actually got the violin teacher involved. We had kids who were dancing, kids who were rapping. We had a slideshow. I mean, there's so many moving parts. I get lost in just getting kids motivated, having fun, enjoying the moment. And I'm hoping someone got the video, and I'll check back with the school to see if
Okay.
yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, yeah. I could include that in the show notes if that is out there somewhere. So I wanted to talk about your philosophy into why hip hop belongs in the ELA classroom. So you talked to me a little bit in the pre-chat about narrowing down to reading comprehension, applying music or song lyrics to the text that students are reading.
Right. So The first reason why hip hop belongs in the ELA classroom is just going back to the history of hip hop. It started with the youth. It started at a block party. It started with kids who, grew up on the streets in the Bronx. Some lived in slums and the projects, different places like that, and they didn't have the resources many other people had. So it started with giving those kids who were, in some ways, forgotten by history or forgotten by the city at that time, giving them a voice to speak up. And more specifically, the movements behind hip hop always revolved around getting the kids connected with the schools, connecting them with the families, and also providing resources for them to achieve in this school and academic setting. Specifically, I think some of the block parties that they would have, they would often have fundraisers to buy supplies for students to get them to go to different programs. So the hip hop as a philosophy and as a movement, it started with the youth as a way to remedy the ills they were facing, and also more importantly to give them a voice to speak to those in their community and especially to each other and to adults. So as we know with language arts, one of the most important things is the aspect of communication. Hip hop specifically addresses that by being a tailored made movement to give students a voice to express and innovate. So just that alone gives us good reason to have hip hop firmly in the classroom.
Yeah, and I think also, like you said, students can make up their own lyrics. Teachers can make up lyrics to help kids remember things. But we talked a lot in the pre-check about some educational rap songs that don't work. Like I
Yes.
mentioned, maybe some publishers have some, little cartoons that they put out in their curricula, and sometimes it's just too corny, and the kids
Yeah.
don't. They laugh at it, and it doesn't really work to help them remember it. So if teachers are thinking of using ELA rap songs to remember facts in ELA, math, or even world language, how
Mhm.
what would you advise as to something that would work?
Right. Now, when it comes to using hip hop in education in general, but specifically in ELA, the first thing I always remember is that it has to be relevant.
Yeah,
There's so many different styles of music, hip hop, and rap. You have to find something that's relevant, and that takes a higher level of cultural competence with hip hop. They're just, I remember I was playing a song that I liked for students, and they said, that's too old." I'm like, "What do you mean?
yeah,
This is a great beat." But you have to listen to what they listen to, and you have to really understand the nuances in music because to kids nowadays, they grew up with one type of hip hop, and when they hear old school hip hop or even hip hop from the 2000s,
yeah,
their ear is so different that it's not relevant to them. So I would always recommend starting with music that's relevant. And
yeah,
we can spend a whole day going on that one, but I would just recommend talking to students, asking them what they listen to. I remember when I taught in one city, one of the activities I would do is I would say, hey, make a list of your favorite songs. Now, obviously, some songs, some of the rap songs and hip hop songs, I wouldn't use in class, but I came across quite a, out of the, I think I had about 20, 30 students in this class. Out of the 20, 30 students, there were at least 5 or 7 songs where I was like, hey, there's something here. I could use this.
yeah,
So that's always the first thing. Like, start with the students, just like how hip hop is about the youth. Start with the youth, figure out what they are listening to. It does take some time to get that survey done, but as you know, I've always done beginning of the year surveys with students, and I think that's a great time to incorporate that, and even mid-year
yeah,
surveys. Coming back after the into the new year, have those surveys done so we understand what's happening with our students and what they're listening to. You obviously not going to be able to use all of it, but some of it you can use. So that's one of the first points of um, using hip hop is relevancy, relevant music. The second part that's this, I think is the second most important piece is relevant language. There's so much research done on cultural relevancy and using students using their quote unquote home language. It goes into, I'm sure you understand this as having worked with multilingual learners, using their home language, using their L1, building on that. And I've realized that while that applies to English learners, multilingual students, that also applies to other students who grew up in different environments, whether it's in an urban environment, whether you're dealing with Black students or any other students who come from a really rich linguistic background. They're bringing in terms that maybe adults don't hear regularly, but we can use that as leverage to build a relationship and to bring them into our classrooms. Like I mentioned at the beginning, like flex on the test. You know, that whole flex, that, that it might be strange to someone because someone might think, oh, flex must mean, to show muscles. But to a student, they understand the figurative language there. And to anchor that into the classroom and to start building off of those things, building off of their own home language, that gives us a really good point to access and to connect with the students. So I mentioned with relevance, relevant music, the style of music, we have to pay attention to that. Um, just now, relevant language. What is the way that, how do they speak and how can we use that? And the third piece, this is, if you can get all three of these, this is great. The third part of relevance is relevant theme. And I think this is probably one of the easier ones to address. It's not the most important one, but it's easy to navigate this one. And by theme or topic, just what are kids listening to? What are kids interested in? And I remember one student, he had mentioned to me that there was a video game rap. I'm like, what? A video game rap? I mean, and at first I was really opposed to it because I'm thinking, I don't want you playing more video games. Why would I do a video game rap? And I actually was like open-minded to it. And I sat down and I was like, oh, this is interesting. It actually told the history of video games.
Okay.
And yeah, it was really cool. So through the language of the song, there was rich cause and effect language, transitional words. There were like main idea themes about how they overcame different problems with like using an analog joystick to motion capture. And I'm like, wow, I thought this was going to be something like, Call of Duty first person shooter, but it turned into a very rich lesson where the text was extremely relevant to the students, but it was also relevant to language arts because of the depth of content it provided.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of times they can surprise us, like just in
Yes.
what they're finding and what the song is about. So, you also, some of your philosophies on the reading is that rap song lyrics can be the best reading passages. So, do you have an example of something you could use for a reading passage?
Yes. So yeah, I write a lot of songs myself based off of what students present to me. So a lot of the things I have on the Rap Opera for Kids YouTube channel, or also I have a store on TPT. But more specifically, if you're looking for something that's more general, I know that the first thing that comes to mind is there is a song by Lupe Fiasco, and he has quite a bit of them. And if you want something that's super clean, squeaky clean, I mean, these songs don't have any cuss words in it, but you just never know what might offend someone. But one
Yeah.
song was called "Kick Push." It was a song about
Okay.
skate, and it was a really cool song about this kid who is learning how to skateboard, and he's talking about the problems and challenges he's facing, and how he is overcoming them as a skateboarder. So that was one song that again had lots of rich language with sequence of events, transitional words, problem and solution, and it also had very good themes. There was a girl he liked, and he was trying to skate to impress her, and he found out, well, she was actually a really good skater, so he didn't need to impress her. She just wanted to skate with someone. So that was a really cool song. Um, there's another song. It was called All Black Everything, and this was a really interesting take because the song was basically the premise of the song was, what if slavery never happened? What if we never had discrimination? And it goes down this path of explaining that that the events in our lives would be very different, and they would be more inspiring, more inclusive. And to give you a specific example, are you familiar with Fred Astaire?
Yes.
Yeah. So the song, it says, Fred Astaire did the first backspin and inspired another group of dancers. And I'm like, whoa, I don't think Fred Astaire ever did a backspin, but his whole point was that if you have a society where we're not in turmoil because of race relations and discrimination, now people are free to explore so many different things. And one of the other lines he had in the song was something to the effect of, this was really interesting. I think he said, Vladimir Putin won the Mandela Peace Prize. And I was like, wait, what? What's going on here? Like, so his whole point was that,
Uh,
if we were to, as he puts it, as he wraps up the song, he says, if we close our eyes and just approach people as people, and we see all black everything, we now begin to connect with them as people. We now
yeah.
begin to go back into what hip hop's really about: peace, love, music, and having fun. That's really the core of hip hop, and when you extend that to the classroom, specifically in that song "All Black Everything," it shows how we can approach people just as individuals. We can put
True.
aside barriers, put aside the categories and the labels, and now you have people being inspired in so many different ways across the world, across the country, and it really unites us in a way, specifically music, but in this case hip hop, and it unites us in a way that we don't see from many other forms of communication or art.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of segue into how educators can help bridge the cultural gap. And you've talked a little bit about that, but also when we're thinking about culture, so when we think about hip hop, a lot of time we think about Black culture, but also when we're thinking about like the Latinx culture, right?
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of students coming from Latin America into our
Yes.
classrooms and they have rap in Spanish. And, we could have students coming from different African countries and they
Mhm.
have maybe a different type of hip hop or other types of music. So, like in general, like when we're working, especially with these multilingual learners, how can we use this as well? And you talked a little bit about visual understanding in the pre-chat.
Yes. So to speak specifically to what you said about just the diversity of students that are now entering, that will have been here, that are continuing to enter, and that those
Yes.
we're working with. Specifically, what I've noticed about hip hop is that hip hop has become a global language. And
Yeah.
one thing I've always looked at is with dance. Dance, the hip hop dance, break dance, what we call b-boying, but formerly called break dance. It is a global phenomenon. Like some of the best dancers in the hip hop genre are Asian, Norwegian, all over the place. And one of the
True.
things I like to do with students is I show them, clips of these different dance groups from these different countries. And I remember one of the ways I continue to practice Spanish is I would go to a video with uh, uh, Spanish Spanish speaking dancers, and I would go in the comments and read the things they're saying, and it's a really
Oh,
engaging way to see like, wow,
uh,
you can learn their language while also using hip hop as a background, as to activate that background knowledge. And just to segue into that for a second, another reason why hip hop is so powerful is because it bridges background knowledge. Many people are familiar with dance. If they're not familiar with dance, at the very least, we understand music because it's rhythmic. It's predictable. You can see what's coming next, and also you can go back and listen to it again. And also, like we mentioned before, it's figurative. People often understand that we might say this, but we mean this. And as you begin to explore that from artistic perspective, it allows everyone to enter into this. I remember specifically working with a student. He was I was helping him. I was grading one of his papers, and he wrote something. He had to write a paper about going on spring break or something, and he wrote during spring break, I tripped through the United States. I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess you can say that. I thought that was so clever. He said, I tripped through the United States,
yeah.
meaning yeah. So it was really interesting to see that, and I was like, wow, I wouldn't say that. I don't know many people who would say that,
Uh-huh.
but that's so creative. And again, hip
Uh-huh.
hop has that level of creativity where you take something and you innovate it to express what you
Sure.
understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's really cool how I mean it lets kids also use their own linguistic style in terms of like how they would
Yeah.
respond to a prompt, right?
Yes.
And also like you're saying in terms of dance, like if you're using hip hop, they might not if it's a multilingual learner, they might not understand all the words, but
Yes.
they might be looking at the body language through dance or I think that's interesting how you learn more Spanish by looking at the comments. So that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good way to learn it too. So um a lot of teachers who might be listening might have their naysayer hat on and they're thinking that rap music and hip hop are not appropriate for kids. You said there's kind of like a 50-50 debate in your experience among
Yes.
educators.
Right. Right. So with anything, I think it's always good to look at the history. And I think we've already presented, history goes back to the youth, goes back to the Bronx, giving them a voice of expression. And I think what most people, I think just like anything in the world, if once big tech or big corporations get a hold of something, they tend to dilute its essence and it becomes something else.
Yeah.
Like, take like something like McDonald's. Are you sponsored by McDonald's? I don't want to get you in trouble.
No.
Okay.
No.
So if you go back, I don't know, 20, 30 years with McDonald's, they made some pretty good food. Okay, I think it wasn't the best, but it was pretty good. Now with McDonald's, I mean, you're lucky if they remember to put all your stuff in the bag. So what happens over time, once a corporation grabs hold of anything that's initially good, it tends to get watered down for the pursuit of
Yeah.
money, for yeah, for the pursuit of because of greed. And that's the same thing that happened with hip hop. Hip hop started with the youth at the block parties. You know, kids were charging. They would charge money, and I don't think there's anything wrong with making money off your skill. They would charge money to come and listen to someone to listen to watch a dance or listen to someone rap or DJ, and they would make some money off of it. But eventually, the music industry got a hold of this thing, and they started perpetuating. Well, you have to say this in the song. You have to do this. You have to wear that, and that is where I think it was in 1974 specifically, hip hop and rap music, they really broke apart. Hip hop, the culture, was a separate thing from rap music industry. So I think anytime a teacher wants to approach or they're confused about what, using hip hop and rap music in the classroom, understand that hip hop is an overall movement and art form, philosophy, and then rap music, it's really just a tool. You can use a tool however you want. If I have a hammer, I can use it to fix my house. I can use it to break into someone's house.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
also, rap music is an industry that is probably the fastest growing and the most lucrative form of music.
Yeah.
Once you start attaching, the industry, and you have these goals that these rappers need to make or these musicians need to make, it's no longer about peace, love, music, and having fun. It's about the bottom line. It's about the dollar.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, I think maybe some of these musicians they might start off with they have a
Yeah,
message to say, right?
absolutely.
And they don't necessarily want to use certain words in the
Yeah,
lyrics, dress a certain way, but that's kind of like the marketing piece of it,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And like you said, it's kind of been washed kind of down from what originally it was. And
Mhm.
there are some museums I visited. Can't remember the exact name of the museum in Seattle. There's a really good museum in Seattle that has like the history of music in general, but there was a
Yeah.
section on hip hop. And like for people that want to learn more, I really like how you said like it broke apart right from the hip hop
Yes.
rap broke apart. So, but do you have any sites or any places people can go to learn more about kind of just the background like you were talking about?
Right. There was a book written, I think, in 2016. I think it was probably the most comprehensive resource. It approaches, I think, it was called Hip Hop Language Arts Thematic Analysis, and
Okay.
the book just goes into the history. It can be used as a lesson on how to teach, use hip hop as a tool in the classroom, and it goes into the history of hip hop and how it's influenced the world. If you're looking for more specific history into hip hop, well, usually any Google search might yield something, but I've written extensively on that. I've written about 5 different songs on pre hip hop history. They're all on my Rap Opera Central channel, and I have some resources available on the Rap Opera for Kids Teachers Pay Teachers site. So either one of those would work. I highly recommend the hip hop language arts thematic analysis book. It's not a sponsor. I just think it was a great book that goes into the detail behind how hip hop is used in the classroom. It provides a very good framework. I do think it needs to be updated. That was back in 2016, and like I mentioned, hip hop is constantly innovating. Kids, and it needs to represent the youth. I think at that time was well done, and right now I'm working on developing more resources that are more current to represent what's happening with our students today.
Yeah, and I think those are things that teachers need, like you said, with the influx of students from all over the world coming into districts throughout the U.S. and being able to hone in on some of their L1 skills and their
Yes.
culture, but also infuse that into learning English and expressing themselves through the reading and language. So, out of everything we talked about, we talked a lot about history of hip hop, how you can use that in the classroom about students expressing themselves. Out of everything, what's one thing you'd like listeners to remember?
Right. The most important thing is just going back to understanding our youth. Again, going back to hip hop as the voice of the youth. That was really the a turning point in America to
Yeah,
put the focus back on student centered learning, understanding what is happening with our youth. And I think it's critical now, as you've heard, what's happening with TikTok and the ban and all these things. I think it's critical now to give our students a voice and to listen to them and see what they're saying, because I think one of the biggest questions that our youth have is what matters. Like what matters? Why are we doing this? Why are they doing that? Finding meaning, we have to really have a dialogue with our students and give them, with our youth specifically, and give them a voice to share. And then we need to communicate with them and also allow them to innovate, because technology is allowing them to innovate and create things very, very quickly. And I think they are in some ways starved for positive innovation.
Yeah.
There's so many really strange challenges and things happening with the the viral videos and the TikTok trends. I think if we give them something positive, like how about you express yourself in this way or use technology in that way, if we give them that hip hop approach to innovating and expressing themselves, I think we'll see a drop in a lot of those challenges, and we'll see more positivity rising out of our students.
Those are good things to think about as people consider using some of these resources in their teaching. Yeah, really dialoguing, finding out how they want to express themselves,
Yeah.
right? Where can people connect with you and find you online? And you've mentioned your TPT store, YouTube. Do you have a website? Where else can they?
Yes. Yeah, I do have. Yeah, I do have a website, rapoperaforkids.com. So those are the three main places. If you're looking for resources, there's always the TPT store. If you want just videos and to learn more and to learn how to apply this, there is the YouTube channel. It's called Rap Opera Central. And then just an overview of everything you can find on rapoperaforkids.com.
Great. I will make sure I include those in the show notes. Well, thank you so much for being on the Out of the Trenches podcast today. It was a pleasure hearing about just ways to really engage our kids and help just hone in on their experiences and be more
Right.
culturally relevant.
All right. Awesome.